I never imagined it would happen like this. We were at the zoo. A place meant for family fun. A place meant to reconnect. But it was the last place I ever thought I'd learn the truth. It had been a while since Emily and I had a day off together. Between my work schedule and her busy life as a museum curator, we rarely had the time to just breathe. So when we decided to spend the weekend at the zoo, I was excited to escape the routine and spend time with her. It was supposed to be innocent, an easy way to reconnect, to laugh, and to talk. Emily was always full of energy. Her enthusiasm was infectious. She loved animals, and I knew this was her idea, a way to break free from the monotony. But something was different about today. She was distant. She kept checking her phone, looking at the screen with a nervous energy that I couldn't ignore. "Is everything okay?" I asked as we walked toward the lion's den. Her eyes flickered briefly to meet mine before darting away. "Yeah," she answered quickly, almost too quickly. "Just work stuff." I tried to brush it off. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Her behavior wasn't usual. The way she glanced at her phone like she was waiting for something, or someone. It was like she wasn't really there, as though her mind was somewhere else entirely. We continued walking through the zoo. I tried to engage her, pointing out the animals, the giraffes, the monkeys, the exotic birds, but she was distracted, her responses short and clipped. The more I tried, the more I felt like she was slipping away. We reached the primate section, where a group of playful chimpanzees were hanging from the trees, their chatter filling the air. Emily stood back, seemingly detached. I couldn't take it any longer. Something was off. "Emily, what's going on?" I asked, my voice tinged with frustration. She froze for a moment, clearly caught off guard. Finally, she sighed and tucked her phone into her pocket. "I'm just tired," she said, offering a weak smile. But I saw right through it. The truth was there, buried beneath the layers of her words, her actions. And I wasn't going to let it slide this time. "I don't believe you," I said. It was the first time I had really spoken up in weeks. I hadn't wanted to confront her, not in the middle of a supposedly pleasant day. But I couldn't hold it in any longer. She looked at me, her face softening for a brief second before she quickly turned away. "I told you, it's nothing." But I knew better. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the unease in her posture. She wasn't telling me the truth. And that's when I heard it. "Hey, Emily." The voice came from behind me, and it sent a chill down my spine. I turned around, and there he was. A man I hadn't seen in years. Ben, one of my old friends from high school. Someone who had been close to Emily during those years, someone who had always been just a little too familiar with her. And there he was, standing in front of me like it was no big deal. "Ben?" I asked, my voice tight with confusion. What was he doing here? "Long time, no see, man," he said, clapping me on the shoulder as though we were old friends. But his eyes lingered on Emily, a little too long, a little too intensely. I felt an uncomfortable knot form in my stomach. Emily didn't seem surprised. She didn't seem happy to see him either, but she didn't seem shocked. She just stood there, awkwardly silent, as if unsure of what to do. "Yeah, it's been ages," I replied, forcing a smile. I didn't trust him. I didn't like the way he was looking at Emily, the way he was speaking to her. There was an air of familiarity, an intimacy that didn't sit right with me. "I didn't know you two were still hanging out," Ben said, his eyes glancing at Emily again before returning to me. Emily shifted nervously beside me. "We've been busy," she said, her voice almost too quiet. And that was when I noticed it, the subtle shift in her body language. The tension in her shoulders. The slight way she pulled away from me, just enough to make it noticeable. I was getting a sinking feeling, like I was piecing together something I wasn't sure I wanted to know. But it was there, like a dark shadow hanging over us. We exchanged some more pleasantries, but the whole conversation felt forced. Ben finally said goodbye, promising to keep in touch. He walked off, and as I turned to Emily, I saw the fear in her eyes. I waited for her to speak, but she stayed silent. This wasn't just a casual meeting. It wasn't just a coincidence. Something was happening, and I had no idea how deep it went. I grabbed her arm gently, pulling her aside. "Emily," I said, my voice low and tense. "What's going on?" She swallowed hard, but the words didn't come. She bit her lip, eyes darting around, avoiding my gaze. I can't do this anymore, Nathan," she whispered, her voice trembling. And that's when the world tilted beneath me. That's when the truth hit like a freight train. I stood there, frozen, as Emily's words echoed in my ears. "I can't do this anymore, Nathan." My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as I reached for her, but she stepped back, her eyes brimming with tears. This was not the woman I married. This was not the woman I trusted. "Emily, what do you mean?" I asked, trying to steady my voice. But I felt the tremor in it. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I had no idea just how deep this would go. She ran a shaky hand through her hair, looking at the ground as though it held all the answers she was too afraid to say out loud. "Please, just don't," she murmured, as though she was trying to protect me from the truth. But the truth was already starting to claw its way to the surface. And I wasn't going to back away. "Emily, talk to me," I urged, my voice now rising. Her eyes darted toward the path ahead, the zoo suddenly feeling more suffocating than it had ever been before. It felt like a cage, not just around the animals, but around us. Around this life I thought I understood. She took a deep breath, and when she finally looked up at me, I saw the weight of her guilt in her eyes. Her lips parted, but the words were slow to come. When they did, they hit harder than I ever expected. I've been seeing someone else." Her voice cracked as she spoke, each word stabbing at my heart. My mind raced, trying to process the admission, the pain of hearing her speak it so casually. Someone else? All these years, all the moments, all the trust, was it all a lie? I felt the ground beneath me shift, like everything I had known was collapsing. But I couldn't let go of her just yet. I had to understand. Who? The question escaped my lips before I could even stop it. I didn't want to hear the answer, but I had to know. She hesitated, her eyes welling up with more tears. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Nathan. I never planned it. It just happened." I couldn't make sense of her words. I wanted to scream, to shout, to demand more, but something held me back. Maybe it was the fact that I didn't want to believe it, maybe that was why my voice came out so weak. "Who, Emily?" I said it again, more firmly this time. Her shoulders trembled, and she looked down at the ground, unable to meet my gaze. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's Ben. It was always Ben. Ben. The man from high school. The one who had always been there, hovering in the background. The one I never trusted. And now, he was the one who had torn apart everything we had. Everything I thought was solid, everything I thought was unbreakable. The zoo suddenly felt like a maze, each turn more suffocating than the last. I wanted to get away. I wanted to flee. But I couldn't. Because I was still holding on to the hope that this was some sort of nightmare I could wake up from. But the truth was real, and it was shattering me in ways I couldn't explain. "Why, Emily?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why him? Why now?" She bit her lip, then took a step closer to me, her eyes pleading for understanding. It was just a stupid mistake. We were just friends, and then one day it happened. We were in the back of the zoo, and one thing led to another. Her words were painful to hear, but I forced myself to listen. Ben came to visit me a few weeks ago. We were talking about old times. One thing led to another, and I let him in. I didn't mean to, Nathan. I swear, I didn't mean to. A cold wave washed over me. I didn't know whether to feel rage, confusion, or heartbreak. It wasn't just the act of cheating that hurt, it was everything. The fact that it was Ben. The fact that it had happened at the zoo, a place we had been so many times, a place that held so many memories. Now, that place was tainted. And it wasn't just once, she continued, barely above a whisper. I could see her trying to hold it all together, but the tears were flowing freely now. We've been seeing each other for the past few months. I didn't want it to happen, but I couldn't stop it. I felt like I was drowning. Every word she said sank deeper into my chest, suffocating me with its weight. I had never felt so small, so insignificant. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with my entire heart, was standing in front of me, confessing to the betrayal that had been festering for months. And I had no idea. You've been seeing him for months? The disbelief in my voice made her flinch. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Ben. The man who had always been a shadow in the background. The one who had lingered just out of reach, always too familiar. And now he was in my life in a way I could never undo. Emily nodded, the tears now falling freely. I'm sorry, Nathan. I'm so sorry. The weight of her apology didn't feel like enough. Nothing could feel like enough after everything she had taken from me. I stood there, frozen in the middle of the zoo, as the world around me carried on without a care. Animals roared in the distance, children laughed, and families walked by, completely unaware of the storm that had just torn apart my life. In that moment, I realized the truth. The truth I had been avoiding, the truth that had always been just beneath the surface. But now it was inescapable. The woman I had loved had betrayed me in the worst way possible. The world felt like it had stopped moving. I couldn't remember when I had last felt so lost, so powerless. Emily was standing right in front of me, but I couldn't recognize her. The woman I had spent years building a life with seemed like a stranger now. And the truth about Ben, the man who had always been in the shadows of our life, was a truth I couldn't escape. Why Ben, Emily? I asked again, my voice hoarse from the emotions I couldn't contain. Her eyes met mine, but the vulnerability in them only made things harder to bear. I don't know. It wasn't like I planned it. It just happened. Her words were weak, as if she, too, was struggling to understand why it had happened. Did you love him? I asked, the words tasting bitter as they left my mouth. It felt like every question I asked only dug the knife deeper. But I had to know. I needed to know the truth, even if it shattered me. Emily hesitated, glancing down at her shoes before looking back up at me. I don't know, she whispered. I didn't love him, Nathan. But it felt good. In a way, I needed it. I felt alive with him. Her confession hit harder than anything else she had said. She had betrayed me, not for love, but for something far darker. And that made it all the more painful. I couldn't breathe. I had never known this side of her, and now, I was faced with a reality I couldn't ignore. How long had this been going on? How long had she been lying to me, pretending everything was okay, when all along, she was slipping away? I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this, I said, the words tasting like ash. I thought we were happy, Emily. I thought you loved me. I gave you everything. The anger started to build in me, but it was the quiet kind, the kind that didn't scream, but instead, burned like a slow, steady fire. I do love you, Nathan, she said, her voice pleading. But it sounded empty. The damage had already been done, and the words no longer had weight. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. Her apologies, her tears, they didn't change anything. How could they? The woman I had given my heart to had betrayed me with someone who had always been there, lurking in the background. Ben, the man I never trusted, the one who had always been too close for comfort. Now, I knew why. I could feel my pulse racing, my mind a blur of confusion and disbelief. How had I missed it? How had I missed the signs? The way she would smile when his name came up. The secretive messages, the late nights when she said she was just working late. It had all been there, right in front of me, but I had ignored it. I felt a rush of nausea. The zoo, the place we had always loved, felt like a prison now. Every animal's call felt like an echo of the pain building inside me. The laughter of children, the innocent joy, it all felt like a cruel reminder of how much I had lost. "Why did you do this, Emily?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I don't understand." "Why Ben? Of all people, why him?" She looked away, her eyes glazing over. "I don't know, Nathan. I don't know. He was always there, and we started talking, and one thing led to another." Her voice was weak, but it was the truth. She didn't have an answer for why it happened, just that it did. And that was enough to rip my heart out. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" I asked, my voice now steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Did you think I wouldn't notice?" "I didn't want you to find out," she whispered, the guilt flooding her face. "I thought I could keep it hidden. I didn't want to hurt you, Nathan. I never wanted you to know." But the damage had already been done, and no amount of hiding or pretending could change that. I stood there, feeling the weight of her confession pressing down on me. The world seemed to close in, the air too thick to breathe. How had it come to this? How had I gone from loving my wife to standing here, broken by the one person I had trusted more than anyone else? And then, the image of Ben flashed in my mind. His smug grin. The way he always seemed to have his hand just a little too close to Emily, like he was waiting for the moment to strike. I had always felt something off about him. Now, I knew I had been right. I felt an overwhelming urge to confront him. To demand answers. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't change anything. Nothing would ever undo what had happened. "I need to get out of here," I said suddenly, turning away. The emotions were too much. I couldn't stand to be in the same place where Emily and Ben had shared whatever twisted bond they had. I needed space. I needed to breathe. But as I walked away, a part of me was torn. A part of me wanted to scream. Another part of me wanted to turn back and beg her to explain, to tell me everything that led to this. But I knew it would never change the fact that she had betrayed me. And as I walked out of the zoo, the sound of the animals behind me seemed to mock my pain. The world went on, oblivious to the storm that had just torn apart my life. The days that followed felt like an endless cycle of fog and confusion. I couldn't escape the image of Emily, standing there, confessing everything she had done. Ben. Her betrayal. The place that had once felt like a sanctuary for us both had become a nightmare. I couldn't stop thinking about the way she had looked at me when she said it. Her eyes were full of regret, but I knew that regret didn't change anything. The damage was done. And no amount of tears or apologies would undo the past. I had spent so many years trusting her, loving her, believing in the life we built. But now, it felt like that life had been ripped away from me in an instant. I couldn't understand it. Why Ben? Why did she go to him? I knew their friendship had been close, but I never imagined it would lead to this. The thought that he had been there, waiting for the right moment to strike, made my blood boil. But what hurt the most was the realization that Emily had let it happen. She had let it happen, and she had kept it hidden from me. I had been right there, by her side, and she had chosen to betray me. I spent hours sitting in my office, trying to focus on work, but nothing could pull me away from the thoughts racing through my mind. I could hear her voice echoing in my head, telling me how it wasn't about love, how it was just a moment of weakness. How could she say that? How could she reduce it to nothing more than a fleeting moment of weakness? It felt like a slap in the face. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. Every time I saw her, I saw Ben's face behind hers. The way she smiled at him. The way she had let him touch her, hold her, kiss her. I couldn't erase those images from my mind. And every time I looked at her, I saw the ghost of their betrayal. "Do you still love me, Nathan?" Her voice echoed through the empty house one night, breaking the silence that had settled between us. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. I didn't know. How could I love her after everything? After what she had done? The trust had been shattered, and the pieces couldn't be put back together. "Do you?" she pressed, her voice shaking. I could hear the desperation in her words, but it didn't move me. Not anymore. How could I love someone who had betrayed me in such a profound way? I don't know, I said quietly, my voice steady but cold. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again, Emily. It was the truth. I didn't want to hurt her, but I couldn't lie to myself. The love I had once felt for her was gone. It was replaced with anger, confusion, and a deep, unshakable sadness. I thought about the zoo. The animals. The way everything had seemed so normal, so carefree, just hours before everything had changed. But now, even the simplest memories were tainted. I couldn't look at anything without seeing the truth of what had happened. The betrayal. The lies. The man she had chosen over me. I tried to reach out to Ben. I needed answers. I needed to know why. But he was never around. It was as if he had vanished, hiding in the shadows where he felt safe. He knew what he had done. He knew that if I found him, I would confront him not with words, but with something much deeper, much darker. Days turned into weeks, and the silence between Emily and me grew. There were no more conversations about our future, no more plans for the life we had once dreamed of. The walls of our home felt suffocating now, like they were closing in on me with every breath I took. I couldn't stand being around her, yet I couldn't bring myself to leave. I had loved her for so long, and even in this pain, I couldn't let go. But I knew that something had shifted. The foundation of our marriage had crumbled, and no amount of effort could rebuild it. I was spiraling. The anger and the sadness were consuming me. I thought about the times when Emily and I had laughed together, when we had shared dreams and made promises. Now, those memories felt hollow. She had taken those moments and used them to hide the truth. To deceive me. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I left the house, driving aimlessly, trying to escape the suffocating grip of my thoughts. The city lights blurred past me, a reflection of the chaos inside my mind. Where was I going? What was I even trying to find? I wasn't sure. I only knew that I needed to be away from her, away from everything that reminded me of what had been lost. I ended up at a bar, a place I hadn't been to in years. The dim lighting and the low hum of conversation felt like a small relief from the constant noise in my head. I ordered a drink, and for a moment, I just sat there, letting the alcohol dull the edges of my thoughts. But it didn't work. Nothing could. The truth was still there, haunting me. And no amount of distance or distraction would change that. I looked around the bar, watching the faces of strangers, their lives going on as if nothing had happened. How could they go on so easily? How could they live their lives without the weight of betrayal hanging over them? Do you ever wonder what could have been? The voice pulled me out of my thoughts. I looked up to find a woman standing in front of me. She smiled softly, as if she could sense the storm inside me. But I wasn't interested in her. I wasn't interested in anyone. Not now. Not while I was drowning in the pain of my own heartache. The hours seemed to stretch into an eternity that night. The drinks blurred into the background as I continued to wrestle with my thoughts. Everything had changed in an instant, but it felt like the pain had always been there, just waiting for the right moment to strike. Emily's betrayal felt like an anchor, weighing me down, pulling me further into a dark abyss. I didn't know what I was doing, didn't know how to find my way back to a life I could recognize. Everything was broken now. I spent the night at the bar, staring at the glass in front of me, lost in my misery. The woman who had tried to talk to me faded into the background, and the noise around me felt like static. It wasn't enough to drown out the thoughts of her, the woman who had betrayed me, who had slept with someone else while I was blind to the signs. I still couldn't wrap my mind around it. How had she been able to look me in the eyes and pretend nothing was wrong? How had she lied so convincingly, so smoothly, and not felt a single ounce of guilt in those moments? It was as if our entire life together had been built on a foundation of lies. How could someone you trusted so completely destroy everything without hesitation? I left the bar just before dawn, the city streets eerily quiet, like they were mourning with me. I had no destination, no clear plan. I just needed to escape, to be alone with my thoughts. I drove for hours, not knowing where I was headed, but not caring either. The world outside felt like a blur, like a dream I no longer wanted to be a part of. When I finally stopped, I was at a park by the water, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore barely reaching my ears. I got out of the car, the chill of the early morning air biting at my skin. Everything felt surreal. As if I was watching someone else's life unfold, not my own. I took a seat on a bench, staring out at the horizon, wondering where I had gone wrong. How had I missed the signs? Why hadn't I seen it coming? It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was the trust, the deep, unspoken bond that we had shared. I had believed in her. And she had destroyed that belief with one selfish act. What was I supposed to do now? Could I ever trust again? Could I ever believe in anything the way I had believed in her? The weight of everything settled on me then, and I felt it all, the anger, the sadness, the confusion. I felt like a fool. A man who had been so blind to the truth, so unaware of the lies that had been creeping into his life. And now, I was left to pick up the pieces, but the pieces didn't fit anymore. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my spiral. I hesitated before pulling it out, knowing who it was before even looking at the screen. It was Emily. She had been trying to reach me for hours, sending messages, calling, begging for a chance to explain. I couldn't bring myself to answer her. What was there left to say? Could I really listen to her voice without hearing Ben's as well? I put the phone back in my pocket, letting it buzz away into silence. It was over. No matter how many times she apologized, no matter how many tears she shed, I couldn't go back to the way things were. She had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. And the damage had been done. I sat there for what felt like hours, the sun slowly rising, casting long shadows across the park. I knew what I had to do. I had to face her. I had to confront Emily and tell her the truth, that I could no longer be with her. That I could never look at her the same way again. But as the thoughts swirled in my mind, one question kept coming back to me. Why did Ben do it? Why had he, of all people, been the one to cross that line? He knew me. He knew what Emily meant to me. And yet, he still chose to betray me in the worst possible way. I had to know. I had to confront him. No more running. I needed answers. And if he wasn't going to give them to me, I was going to take them. I got back in the car, the decision made. I couldn't stay here any longer, stuck in the endless cycle of confusion and hurt. I drove, my hands gripping the wheel, my mind racing. I had to see Ben. I had to make him understand what he had done. It wasn't about vengeance. It wasn't about trying to punish him for what he had done. It was about closure. It was about understanding why this had happened, why my life had been shattered in the blink of an eye. I needed to hear it from him. I needed to hear him admit that he had betrayed me. I needed to look him in the eye and know that he understood the consequences of his actions. I pulled up outside his house, my heart pounding in my chest. The sky was overcast now, the air thick with tension. I sat in the car for a moment, staring at his house, unsure of what would happen next. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep running. I couldn't keep pretending that everything would be okay. I had to face him. And I had to do it now. I stepped out of the car, my feet heavy as I walked toward his front door. There was no turning back now. I stood at Ben's front door, my hand hovering over the doorbell, unsure whether I should press it. Every muscle in my body was tense, my heart racing with anticipation and anger. Would he answer? Would he hide behind a facade of excuses, trying to justify his actions? I couldn't be sure, but I knew one thing: I needed answers. I needed to look him in the eye and make him understand what he had done. I pressed the doorbell, the sound echoing in the quiet of the morning. Moments later, the door creaked open, and there he was, Ben. His expression faltered when he saw me standing there, but it quickly morphed into something I couldn't quite place. Guilt? Defensiveness? Or maybe just the realization that his secret was no longer his to keep. Ben, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm raging inside me. He didn't respond at first, just stood there, as if waiting for me to speak again. I could see the conflict in his eyes. Was he going to deny it? Was he going to lie to my face? I need to talk to you, I continued, the words slipping out as if they had been building up for far too long. You and Emily, what happened? My voice wavered just slightly at the mention of her name, but I didn't let him see it. I had to stay strong. This was my moment to get the truth. No more games. Ben stepped back from the door, his posture stiff, almost as if he didn't want to invite me in. I understood. This wasn't a conversation he had planned for. But I didn't care. I wasn't going anywhere until I got the answers I was owed. I pushed past him, entering his living room without waiting for an invitation. He sighed heavily and closed the door behind me, but didn't follow me immediately. I turned to face him, meeting his eyes head-on. Why, Ben? I asked, my voice hoarse with emotion. Why her? Why my wife? Ben ran a hand through his hair, looking anywhere but at me. He seemed like a man on the edge of a breakdown, but that didn't excuse what he had done. I didn't care how uncomfortable this conversation made him, he had to face the consequences of his actions. You don't understand, Ben muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. He finally looked at me, but it wasn't the look of guilt I had expected. It was something more complicated, as if he too was struggling with his own emotions. I never meant for it to happen. It just did. I took a step closer to him, my patience wearing thin. No, Ben. You don't get to say that. You don't get to pretend it was an accident. You planned this. You made a choice. My voice was sharper now, my anger bubbling to the surface. You knew how much she meant to me. How much we meant to each other. And yet, you still. I couldn't finish the sentence. The betrayal was too much. Ben looked away, his face twisting in what I could only describe as shame. Look, I didn't think it would destroy everything, he began, his words stumbling over themselves. You've always been the one in control. You've got your life together. Your career. Your family. And I guess I just wanted to feel something. I wanted to feel alive. His voice trailed off, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of vulnerability. But it didn't matter. I wasn't here for his excuses. I was here for the truth. Alive? I repeated, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. Is that what you think this was about? You could have talked to me, Ben. You could have come to me if you were struggling. But you chose to sleep with my wife instead. The hurt in my voice was undeniable now. This was more than just betrayal. It was a violation of everything I had ever trusted him to be. Ben's shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I saw him truly defeated. I wasn't thinking straight, he admitted, his voice barely audible. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't make it right, but I never meant to hurt you. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. The words he was saying didn't make the situation any better. They didn't change what had happened, didn't change the fact that he had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. But hearing him say it, hearing the admission, made me feel something. Something close to closure. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. You've hurt me, Ben, I said quietly, my voice steady again. But you've hurt her too. Emily, she doesn't know what she wants anymore. She doesn't know what she's done. I don't even know if I can look at her the same way again. The words came out before I could stop them, and the truth stung like a raw wound. Ben stepped forward then, his eyes wide with regret. I didn't want to hurt her. I swear I didn't. But I didn't think about it like that. He looked at me with such a mix of guilt and sorrow that I almost felt sorry for him. But I couldn't. He had made his choice. And now we both had to live with the consequences. I stood there in silence for a moment, letting the weight of everything settle between us. There was no easy way out of this. No way to undo what had been done. I would never get back what had been lost. And neither would Ben. We were both trapped in this mess, with no clear way forward. Finally, I turned to leave. I didn't want to hear any more apologies. I didn't want to stay here any longer, listening to the broken man who had once been my closest friend. I'm done, Ben, I said, my voice low. You've lost everything. And so have I. I walked out of the house without another word, the door closing behind me with a soft thud. The silence of the street outside felt colder than I remembered. But I didn't care. I had nothing left to give.